Dive in, kind of starting with the guardianship side, essentially kind of starting out with what is guardianship, diving into some of the terms and then some of the alternatives. We'll spend a little bit of extra time on the alternatives to guardianship piece, mainly because I like people to be a little bit more educated on all of those alternatives. When it comes to guardianship, I will say it's become a little bit of a bad word in school districts and around. A lot of times that's because when people think of guardianship or conservativeship, they're thinking about some of the movies that have come out, or the Britney Spears scandal, where its rights were stripped away and everything went south for that person. But we also have to think about it in different ways for our families as well. Okay? For example, my family, we chose to have full guardianship over my brother, and you'll hear me reference my brother a lot through these, but we had full guardianship not to keep things away from him because maybe he can't make the decision, but we wanted to protect him. Okay, my brother would give the shirt off his back to anybody that asked. So if somebody came in and said, hey, if you sign this piece of paper, I get to get a new car, can you help me out? He's not understanding that, okay, I'm legally signing a document to be on this loan. He's just thinking, cool, my buddy's gonna take me out in his new car when he gets it. Okay, so all these pieces are more of a protection piece for us as well. So just kind of keep that in mind as we're going through some of this. But also keep in mind that full guardianship may not be the answer for everyone. Okay, and it's something you should explore the alternatives. We should look for the least restrictive, but at the same time, your family best, you know what is needed there. Okay, so what is guardianship? At age 18, most states, including Texas, see your child as their own individual person. They can make their own legally binding decisions. And so guardianship is essentially what, kind of takes some, it does take rights away or decision-making powers away from that person. And so, that's again why we want to make sure we're looking at the least restrictive option. If our child is able to make their own decisions or go forward in life and, get a job, they want to vote, they want to do all these things, well, hey, maybe some of those other pieces are, a little bit better fit for us. Okay. So terms to know: protected person, obviously it's your child, that's the person that we're looking to get guardianship over. Guardian or conservator, they're the same thing essentially, but in the state of Texas we use the word guardian. And then trustee, that is, if you guys have heard of a special needs trust or have a trust for your child, that's where you would step in that role as kind of that financial manager over that trust for the individual. Okay. So when we think of guardianship, most people think that it's you either take it or you don't. That's not always true. Okay, you can have limited guardianship. Okay, you can, like when you're working with the attorney, if you're going in and saying, hey, my child, maybe they are really good at making their own decisions monetarily, so they can, sign a check, they can pay their own rent, they understand the concept of $1, but maybe they don't like needles. Okay, so maybe on the healthcare side, if the doctor came into the room and said, hey, this is a life-saving surgery that you need to have, but it requires us to put an IV in, your child's gonna be like, nope, I'm not doing that. Well, we need to kind of want to have that power to say, hey, yes, we need this procedure, right? So kind of knowing that, hey, we can have limited, it's not just an all or nothing. And obviously we can have joint as well. So whether that's mom and dad or if mom and dad are gone, because a lot of the planning that we do is, looking out past the parents as well. What the big question we always get asked is, what happens when I'm not here? Okay. And so we always have to think down the road too, okay, hey, once mom and dad are gone, who is going to step into that role of guardian? Is it just one person, maybe a sibling or an aunt or an uncle that is stepping in and saying, hey, I'll be the guardian? Or is it, is it a community effort? We have a couple people that are like, hey, we all want to help out in this situation. Okay. So appointing a guardian, it's not as simple as just walking up to the courthouse and saying, hey, this is who I want my guardian to be. So even if your child agrees that, hey, I need someone to help me out, it is something you have to go through the court process to be appointed as the guardian. Okay? And so when I say the court process, that does mean that, you know, your child is going to have to go to court. They're going to be served papers that they're going to court. You know, you can be there. It's not like, you know, they're going to show up and in disguises and, hey, you've been served. It's not like the movies or anything. But, you know, typically a police officer comes to the door. It's well known that it's happening. They serve the papers, and your child will be appointed at what's called a guardian ad litem as well, which is, that's their attorney. Okay? Because the state of Texas, they want to make sure that it's not just somebody coming in and, you know, having that power over another person. Okay? Has anybody seen the movie I Care a Lot? It's a Netflix show. Have you? Okay.
I have. Yes, it's
So
very good.
essentially, the full premise is there's this evil woman. She goes in, finds elderly people, and comes in, has them sign the documents over to help them out, and all of a sudden she has full power over all of their assets. Okay? Having that guardian ad litem, making sure that somebody is representing your child, is how they prevent that from happening. Okay? Now that doesn't mean it's going to be a full-blown court case of you battling the other attorney that, hey, I need guardianship. But, you know, typically they're just going through the processes, making sure that, okay, hey, does this individual, you know, have the disability that is said? Do we have the doctor's records? Do we, you know, is there a reason for this child to be giving up some of these rights that they, you know, might be able to maintain? Okay, so, you know, again, it's just more of the full legal process. I mean, you'll hear me say it a lot, but the government's going to do what the government's going to do. Especially on the government benefits piece, that becomes even more fun. But, you know, it's more making sure that we are in a good spot, making sure that we're going through the full process. You will need an attorney. If you don't know a good special needs guardianship attorney, let me know, let Jim know. Jim's got great connections. I use Jim a lot for his connections. So, but, you know, we want to make sure that we're utilizing a special needs attorney in this as well. You know, we have people that say, hey, I've got a buddy that's an attorney. He said he would help me out on this. Okay, sometimes that works out, but sometimes they don't know the most up-to-date rulings, proceedings, everything like that. So make sure that we do work with a attorney that specializes in that area. Okay. Liability of the guardian, you're going to be, it's not really tested every year, but you have to file paperwork every year proving that, hey, you are taking care of the individual that you have guardianship over. Okay, this isn't, hey, when the child turns 18, I get guardianship, but I never have to prove it again. Again, their process is they want to make sure that you are providing that care, providing the resources the child needs and everything like that, helping them out through life. Okay, being a parent. Okay, so it's easy for you to prove it as a parent, but the reason I like to see that piece in there is we also kind of gives us comfort for the next guardian. You know, even though we may trust that next guardian wholeheartedly, we also know that legally they've got to prove every year that, hey, we are taking care of your child. We are doing these needed pieces. Okay. Okay. Removal of guardian. It's not a permanent thing. You know, as easy as that. If the guardian is not performing their duties, they can be removed. Okay. They can also be removed if it's proven to the court that guardian is not needed anymore. Okay, so whether, you know, can be removed if the guardian is not performing their tasks, or if the protected person is just, you know, if they're progressing out of it, it's not a permanent fixture as well. Termination of guardianship, kind of like say, you know, as long as you're doing all the duties that you should be as a guardian, you're going to be protected. If you do change states, you will have to go through the process again. Okay, that's always a fun one too. We have, you know, right now we have a lot of people moving to Texas, and a lot of families come to us because they've moved to Texas, and they're like, why do I have to do it again? It's a state by state, you have to be approved by the state for the guardianship. Alright, cool. So alternatives. So here's a list. As you can see, there's a lot of different alternatives to guardianship. Guardianship is, again, the most talked about and, you know, the most protective or some people say the most restrictive, but there's a lot of alternatives that we can look at depending on your situation. Okay, so I want you guys to just kind of understand at least some of the basics here of them so that you know, okay, and you guys may look at some of these or hear about some of these and just know immediately that, well, guardianship is what I'm doing. But if you haven't heard any of these, the only one that's not up here, and I don't know why, is supported decision making, which is a big one that has come in the last few years. It is a good alternative, but it's a little bit more of you're essentially kind of, they're writing in that you're on their team and you're a consultant, but at the end of the day, even with supported decision making, your child is making that decision. Okay, so you can talk until you're blue in the face of why they shouldn't do something, but if they decide I am going to do it, it's their decision. Okay, go ahead into the next. So representative payee. So if you do get SSI, you'll want to have, or you'll want to be what's called representative payee. Okay, so this essentially means that if your child is receiving the government benefits, that you can help out and help manage the checkbook and all of that type of stuff. Okay, that does not mean you do not want to commingle assets, meaning don't have an account that you are on and your child is on and think that that is representative payee. You want to be representative payee over the account, okay? Not a joint account owner. And we also don't want to just say, okay, well, I already have a checking account, so I'm just going to add my child to this, because if you haven't heard of the $2,000 asset limit, we'll get into that in the next presentation. But if you have over $2,000, and even if it's your money, but your joint account on there with your child, if they are on the account and there's over $2,000, you'll lose your access to SSI. Okay, so the $2,000 asset limit is a big one. That's why we want to make sure, hey, we have this separate account that we are representative payee on. Okay. Healthcare representative, exactly what it sounds like. You're able to help make those healthcare decisions for them, and just being in the room, talking to the doctors, because technically, keep in mind, at age 18, your child is an adult. If you walk into the doctor's office when they are 18, and let's just say we're having a bad day, and your child says, I don't want mom, I don't want dad in the room today. Legally, the doctor has to listen to your child. Okay? That's the same in any situation, but once they're 18, the doctor, the teachers, the transition specialists, they have to listen to the child. Okay?
That same goes for an art, and we have had several students say, I don't want my parents participating, and we honor that because they are an adult, and the only way that would not occur is if they had guardianship to be that decision maker. So, and that does happen, and it's not like, oh, it happens every once in a while. It happens every single year. So it's a common occurrence.
Yep. Okay. Durable power of attorney. So a lot of people, I think there's been some misinformation about the power of attorney piece, because we had a lot of people for a while, they were like, well, I'm not doing guardianship, I'm just gonna do power of attorney because it's the same thing. It is if the person is incapacitated, okay? Which is the same way if I had power of attorney over Jim. Okay, I can have power of attorney over Jim, that doesn't mean I can make decisions for him unless he is, knocked out from a car wreck or, some dire situation, and a decision would then go to me. Okay, it's the same way for a child with special needs. People were getting power of attorney because it's a lot more affordable. You don't have to go through the full court costs. It's just some signatures, and they thought, okay, hey, I'm protecting them. It's not the same thing. You don't have guardianship. It's more, it's the what if scenario of if they're knocked out or something like that, incapacitated, and you have to help make a decision. Okay. Specific power of attorney, that's, same way with guardianship, how you can be specific on, hey, we want guardianship over this section or this section. Specific power of attorney is kind of the same thing. If, we wanted to have power of attorney over the estate, or if we wanted to have power of attorney over medical, we can separate that out as well and not have the full durable power of attorney. Trust, a little bit different, obviously, than something like guardianship, we're not really talking about the person, we're talking about the money. Okay, we're talking about the inheritance, the money that's come in, typically gifts from other people, or if there was like a medical malpractice, typically money will be left into a first party special needs trust. Like if there were complications at birth or something and the child was awarded money, it's going to go into what's called a first party special needs trust. Okay, which there's also a third party special needs trust, which if you guys have heard about a special needs trust, typically the third party is what people are talking about, because that's how we're protecting our assets. Okay, that's where we want to leave our money, is into a third party, make sure that we have some of the power over, the money that we are leaving behind, and also we're protecting those government benefits. Okay, that's one of the main reasons for the special needs trust, is that, again, we have a $2,000 asset limit. One of the only ways to really protect that $2,000 asset limit and make sure that we are going above and beyond for our child when we're no longer here is going to be the third party special needs trust. Okay, because the third party special needs trust does not count against that $2,000 asset limit. Okay, the way that trust is seen, because it is third party, it is not owned by the individual, and it is not a part of their estate. That trust is meant for the benefit of your child with special needs, but they have no ownership of it. They're not trustee or anything like that. It can pay for a lot of different things. Like let's say that, the one example we always like to give, we have a family that every year the family takes the child to Disneyland. Best trip of the year, the whole family loves it and everything, so the parents wanted to make sure that when they were no longer here, that the child was still able to go to Disneyland. Well, you can't do that on a $943 a month SSI check. So the family wanted to make sure that in the special needs trust that they left behind, they had enough money in there that, hey, every year we can send our child to Disneyland. Okay, and they can also send a caregiver, so the sibling they had written in, that, hey, every year you guys keep this trip going. Okay, so the special needs trust is meant to go kind of above and beyond for families to make sure that, hey, we're doing the things we still want to do, not just dependent on that $943 a month. Okay.
But you can't save up for a trip to Disney because you can't get above $2,000.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and Disney's a little bit more than $2,000, so. Yeah, so protective proceedings, again, that's just making sure that, hey, we're going through the full process, we're making sure that everything is in order, just following the rules. Again, that's where we bring in the special needs attorney. Yeah, obviously I'm not an attorney. I wouldn't want to have to go through the processes they do for this. It does not seem fun, going to court, all that, but getting the right attorney to make sure that we're doing the right things is good too. And then parental power, by show of hands, whose child is over 18 in here? Do we have anyone? Or?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So, you're out of parental power right now. So parental power is essentially, while your child is a minor under age 18, you have all those powers, those rights as the parent. Essentially, when we step into guardianship, that's when some people say, like, guardianship is taking our child's decisions away or very restrictive on them, different things like that. I like to see it as we're also maintaining what we've had. Okay, before age 18, we've had all of these decision-making powers. We've been able to help our child this way. Just because they turn 18 doesn't magically mean all of a sudden now they can make these decisions. But the law says it does. Okay, in our minds, for some of our families, it's, hey, at 30, 32 is when the child is finally kind of at a spot where, hey, now they could probably start making some decisions, so we start looking at some other alternatives. But age 18 is not a magic number in the special needs world that, hey, all of a sudden, hey, everything's cured, everything's great, and now they can make their own decisions. So that's why we have the guardianship piece, to make sure that, hey, we're maintaining what we do have. Okay?